Yeah, so apologies that I can't be here in person. Unfortunately, I've got to go to Tokyo. I was really looking forward to being here. For a long time, I've really wanted to sit down and have a conversation with Colin Cecil, and I'm gutted that I can't be here. I suppose I first heard of him a few years ago when friends of mine that weren't wise enough to stop painting chains and vandalising stuff when I did began dropping like flies, and the evil rat catcher was Mr. Cecil. And I don't know the stories that I've heard. I suppose he's a bit like a bogeyman, a graffiti bogeyman. If he gets you on his list, then he kind of gets you. And stories that I've heard is he came up from Bristol and somehow he managed to get a load of money for British Transport Police Vandal Squad, and Vandal Squad was or is the lowest of the low in British Transport Police, and British Transport Police is one step down from the Metropolitan Police, so they're kind of considered like Toy Town cops. But somehow he managed to get a load of funding and used technology to catch everybody, emails and number plate recognition system and mapping your phones, and with that kind of evidence it's hard to get off. And then ferociously pushed for really high or long prison sentences, and you get people going to prison for like 5 years, and it's like, for what? Changing the colour of something, and this is my other question, is like, I know for a fact that nobody cares anymore. Like, the whole world is covered in graffiti and street art and no one cares. It's just part of urban noise. It used to offend people 30 years ago. People thought that graffiti was scary, the broken window theory. If someone can tag the side of this wall, does that mean they can smash the window of my car? Does that mean they can rape my daughter? So, for a long time, graffiti had those kind of, it implied that there was danger lurking around the corner and no one was safe. But fast forward 30 years, no one cares. And so I think it's quite interesting that somebody like Colin Cecil does care so passionately about something that nobody else gives a shit about. You know what I mean? It's like tracksides on British Rail and London Underground. If they stopped painting over them, they would get tagged, and then people would do silver stuff over it, and then eventually people would do nice paintings over it, and then it would actually be something to look at. And yet they waste millions and millions of pounds painting over it continuously. And the natural evolution of graffiti is it will just turn out looking nice. It might not be what you want as the owner of those walls, but at least you're not going to waste millions of pounds cleaning it off. So I'm just, I'm interested about why he hates it so much. What angers him about it? It's like, I think there's been plenty of kind of, studies on why we do graffiti, and I understand a little bit why I did graffiti and I do what I do, but I don't understand why he is so mad. Maybe if his life was like slightly different, then he would have been a graffiti writer. Maybe he wanted to be a graffiti writer. Maybe he got bullied at school. You hear that all the time. So gutted that I can't be here. Mr. Cecil, send me an email. I'd love to sit down and have a chat with you at some point. I started doing graffiti probably when I was 14. I saw a book called Subway Art, saw a documentary about graffiti, and graffiti was around that time imported globally, or exported from New York globally, and anyone that was my age and vaguely interested in being naughty was bitten by the graffiti, hip hop, electro, breakdancing bug. And yeah, it became my world. It totally became my life. I, just tagged everything for years, met other graffiti writers, tagged further afield, got into trains, painted loads of trains, painted trains all over the world, and then slowly got arrested, and eventually I think the last time I got arrested, I got like a £6,000 fine and 300 and whatever hours community service. I got like a massive fine and the maximum amount of community service you could get. So pretty much I was leaving the judge no other choice but to send me to prison if I turned up being arrested for graffiti again. So around that time, I kind of decided that I was going to stop getting arrested for graffiti. I didn't want to stop painting stuff. And this was probably, 15 odd years ago. And, when I first got into graffiti, I'd look at those top to bottom whole cars in Subway Art by Scene and was just amazed that it was on the side of a train. I couldn't believe that somebody had done that. And kind of that's what I wanted to do. So graffiti to me was just the most amazing, unbelievable thing I'd ever seen, the greatest art form, and I really believed that it was going to change the world. And fast forward 20 years, it didn't live up to any of those expectations, and I was disillusioned by the self-imposed rules of graffiti, and I just like graffiti writers' attitudes. And street art had begun to kind of happen, and people that kind of had one foot in the graffiti world but were also kind of like a little bit smarter, began to do something that wasn't graffiti, that was a little bit more thoughtful. Invariably they would kind of choose a location, make something at home or in their studio, and then go out and do it. And street art also, it wasn't just a can of spray paint, it was stickers, stencils, street furniture. It was using your environment to your advantage. It was incorporating things that were on the wall, or how the street worked. So I got really interested in street art. We were going to a place called the Dragon Bar, or the old Dragon Bar in Shoreditch. It was like our hangout. It was a very kind of graffiti friendly, street art friendly place, and lots of people would go there. I met people from all over the world that kind of turned up there. It had a reputation for being like an arty graffiti kind of hub, and lots of booze and lots of drugs, so everyone enjoyed it. And so I was meeting all these interesting people that were doing street art, and I kind of decided that this is the route that I wanted to go down. I was going to get sent to prison. I had to stop getting arrested, but I didn't want to stop painting. I was still really passionate about that. So I just kind of changed what I did. I always had an interest in typography and words. Graffiti for me was, exploring the letter form. It was never about b-boy characters and New York skylines. So I just kind of took my interest in typography to like its most basic form, and started painting stuff on shop shutters and walls, Sunday morning, broad daylight, with a workman's high visibility jacket. And I never got arrested again for doing anything illegally. The first year or so, pretty much everything, all the street art I did was illegal. I think I did like 60 shutters in like 3 months. I was trying to do all the letters of the alphabet, and yeah, like 75% of those were like without permission. And yeah, it just enabled me still to get that buzz of kind of breaking the law, still to get that buzz of being on the bus or the train, seeing my stuff in the streets, and not get arrested. And the weird thing is, I was getting really positive feedback from people. I'd made a conscious decision not to put my name to the stuff that I wrote, the street art that I did in the street, and people were just interested about it. You know, I had a graffiti writer's attitude to doing it, so it was all about as much as you possibly could in a short amount of time as you possibly could, you know, get maximum coverage and maximum exposure. And yeah, it didn't have my name on it, and people were like, what is this? You know, and it raised questions in people's minds. And you know, you never got that with graffiti. Graffiti was purely, you know, tagging stuff and vandalizing stuff for your own ego and the ego of your graffiti mates or your graffiti crew, or, you know, to prove that you were better than the next person in this really kind of tiny enclosed graffiti world that, you know, that only disgusted everybody else. And yeah, street art just appealed to other people. And you know, it was weird. A lot of the first shutters that I painted when I first started doing the big letters, you know, I was painting over my old tags that had been on these shutters for like 10 years or so down Hackney Road or Broadway Market or Brick Lane. And it was, you know, I'd spent 20 years just fucking things up and making everything a mess. And I just started a career of, you know, making the world a little bit happier and a little bit brighter, and probably starting the gentrification process as I went along with it. But yeah, so I stopped graffiti, started doing street art, which I hate, and then, or the term street art, and then yeah, slowly progressed. And then again down the Dragon Bar I met up with a young Bristolian called Banksy, and we worked together. I helped him out for a few years. We shared a studio, or a couple of studios together, and this was all around the time of the internet kind of happening. And there was a website called the Worcester Collective, and you could paint something in Hackney Wick, photograph it the next morning, put it up on Worcester, and within 12 hours everybody around the world had seen it. And it just, the internet is just responsible for making this, you know, the global art form that it is. And just the way that people can share information, hook up, you know, I go to different countries continuously and just meet writers and street artists. And yeah, the internet has just helped us so much. Even down to selling art. I don't think it would be the art form that it is now without the internet and the technology. And you know, we're kind of, you know, in the art world, and as art movements go, we're still kind of relatively young as artists, and you know, young enough to embrace this technology and use it to our advantage. You know, you only have to look at the way that how Banksy used, you know, Instagram when he did his like residency in New York earlier this year. You know, it's just, yeah, it's crazy how we can share our information, and it's crazy how much people want to lap this information up. You know, artists before would do a show in a gallery, and you know, realistically you'll be lucky if 500 people see those paintings in the course of a month. And now, you know, I do a painting in the street that no one should really care about, and you know, 2,000 people like it on Instagram, and 20,000 people have seen it, and it's on blogs and blah blah blah. So yeah, I met Banksy. We were kind of as artists, we were networking. Bast and Fowl and Ico and Shepherd Fairy and Logan Hicks and Lister and various people from around the world. And you know, none of us had really had like an art education. I hadn't been to art school. Lots of people that I was painting stuff with in the street hadn't been at art school. We were kind of like, you know, graffiti background, or 1 foot in the graffiti background, maybe, you know, interested in advertising, interested in graphic design, aware of kind of how to promote yourselves. But, you know, because we were these like dirty kind of, you know, kind of frowned upon because we paint stuff in the street, galleries weren't interested in showing our work. And you know, so I think, I don't know, definitely consciously in some people's minds and subconsciously in others, but it was definitely kind of a thought. You know, the stuff that we were painting on the street, we were ramming our art down people's faces. We were making people notice us. And then, you know, after a few years, you know, we were getting inquiries. People wanted to buy our work, and there wasn't really a platform for selling it. The galleries weren't as smart as the people that wanted to buy it. You know, the kids in the streets, the fans, the people that loved what we were doing. So we set up a company called Pictures on Walls, and the intention of Pictures on Walls was to produce, you know, good quality screen prints by artists that we liked and enjoyed working with, and sell them at affordable prices. And, you know, that worked pretty well for a few years, and then, you know, the street art explosion happened, and flipping prints, and, you know, we wanted to sell prints for like £150, and, you know, especially the Banksy ones, you know, you couldn't do that because they had a resale value of like £3,000. And, you know, he wasn't interested in the money, he wasn't doing it for the money. And I know that was a really, you know, a massive problem for him. And, you know, you produce art, and if you're going to make art to sell, you know, you invariably as artists, we reinvest that money in other projects and, you know, doing other stuff or traveling and painting. But you want people to buy your work because they love it and they want to look at it and they want to admire it. You know, we don't make this stuff so people can keep it in a plastic sleeve or flip it on eBay or stick it in an auction, you know, the next day or 3 months later. So yeah, for some artists it was definitely, you know, really frustrating that this was happening, and kind of, but anyway, so yeah, the intention of Pictures on Walls was to sell affordable prints, and that lasted a few years, and then we started selling unaffordable prints to people that would sell them for profit. And so anyway, yeah, worked there for a few years. I was the screen printer. I'd never done screen printing before, and yeah, it seemed like a fun thing to do, so I kind of taught myself how to screen print, and yeah, I was the in-house printer for, I don't know, 3 odd years, and yeah, I got pretty good at it at the end. And, you know, the good thing about being an untrained, uneducated screen printer was I didn't know what you could screen print and I didn't know what you couldn't screen print. So we'd get together with artists and they'd say, yeah, we want to use bleach and we want to do that. And, you know, if you went to a commercial screen printer and suggested these ideas, they would tell you no because it's going to ruin the screens. And because we didn't know that, and we were, you know, up for creating interesting projects, we were like, yeah, who cares, let's do it, let's have some fun. And, you know, you had grand ideas of doing an edition of 300 that were bleached and the paper would disintegrate, and it just became so messy, so the edition just became 50. But, you know, we produced interesting stuff. I worked with, you know, Bast and Ico, and I would print something and Bast would scribble over it, and I would print something and he would scribble over it. And it was just fun doing stuff that other people weren't doing, and doing kind of hand finished one-off prints. And I think we were kind of like the first people to really do that and do it well. And yeah, we'd regularly fly artists over to Old Street and make them live in the print studio for a week and treat them like slaves and whip them until we were happy. But no, it was fun. And then yeah, I was still painting lots of stuff on the street. I'd pretty much given up graffiti by then. I was getting more into kind of like my own art, and, you know, I'd always played around with doing bits and bobs on canvas and kind of t-shirt design and all of that, but what I really enjoyed was kind of experimenting in the studio and, you know, making stuff that was, you know, just experimenting with stuff that I felt was beautiful and tight. And, you know, it's weird, it's like a lot of people always say to me, why is there no W in your A to Zs? And it's like, I think at the beginning it started off as like an A to Z, and like the more that I've done them, I think they're just 25 shapes where I experiment with kind of balance and contrast of colour. So kind of it's just a 5x5 grid of shapes where I experiment with colour. I was working, making stuff in my studio, beginning to get invitations to be in group shows and show my art, and I think at that stage I decided that I would leave Pictures on Walls and concentrate on being an artist full time. And I suppose I'd always been an artist full time, but I just started off vandalising stuff and I had to pay them to do it rather than somebody paid me, and now I get paid to do it. So I've managed to turn it into a job, which is a very, very fortunate position to be in. So I started doing shows and selling paintings, and then we had a recession and I didn't sell anything. And then I got an email from, I got a phone call from a woman that I'd collaborated with called Eine, and she said, can I give your telephone number to Downing Street? They want to talk to you about giving a painting to the most important man in the world. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, sounds interesting. And cut a long story short, because I've told this story so many times, I gave David Cameron, or Downing Street, a painting which he then gifted to President Obama at the first time they officially met. And they came around my studio, picked up a painting, flew it to Washington. I went, Mr. Obama, artist you should watch out for, benign. I don't know. I've never actually seen the painting after they picked it up. It's probably in the cupboard of unwanted presents that they only get out when that foreign dignitary comes back to visit. But on the back of that, I was wise enough not to try to charge Downing Street any ridiculous amount of money for this painting. I had no idea how many people, how many artists they were talking to. I couldn't possibly believe that me, graffiti writer, kind of street artist with convictions for drugs and graffiti, kind of unemployed or not really working at the time, would be their artist of choice to represent the country. So I kind of assumed that they were talking to a few artists, and I realised that this was like an unbelievably golden opportunity that I couldn't afford to miss. So I didn't want to fuck it up by saying to them, yeah, this painting's $7.5 grand, and them going, that's beyond our budget, thank you, we'll talk to the next person. So when they asked me how much I wanted for the painting, I was like, yeah, you can have it. Just you can have it. I'll even get a courier to drop it off at Downing Street. And so they took the painting, and what was his name? The guy from the News of the World, tapping the telephone. He used to be David Cameron's head of communications. Anyway, he phoned me up, which was quite interesting. I was on the train back from London, he phoned me up, and he was like, Ben, it's whatever my name is. So, I just want to run this through you. We're releasing this to the press tomorrow, and you're going to get inundated with requests for interviews and television interviews. Basically, whenever presidents normally meet, all the English press talk about is what the wives are wearing. But Samantha's pregnant, she can't fly, so they're going to talk about something else, and you are easily the most interesting story, so all anyone's going to want to talk about is you. So I was like, yeah, fine, I've chatted to the press before, and he's like, anything you're uncomfortable with, just don't on, just gave me the spiel. And the next day I got up and I was walking down to my studio, and I turned my phone and I was walking down the road, and there were like 300 emails and like 30 voice messages, and as I was listening to one voice message from the BBC, I could just hear emails dropping in. And yeah, within like 2 hours, newspapers and television crews were lined up outside my studio, and it was like 3 days of back-to-back interviews. So yeah, unbelievable amount of press, like way more press than I could ever imagine, and it just helped my career on a global scale, like unbelievably. And you know, on the back of that, I got invited to do a lot more stuff all over the world. You know, as kind of graffiti writers and street artists, we'd always travelled a lot and painted in weird and far-flung places. But yeah, it just like commercially, and as like, I don't know, important, respected, and not the right words, but as somebody who's actively involved in this movement, it kind of gave me a little bit more of a foundation or a platform to work from. So yeah, since then I just kind of travel places, paint stuff in the street, and do art shows or art projects, and try to earn a living and try to have as much fun as I can. So it's weird. So I've thought a lot about this and had lots of conversations about why David Cameron chose me. And okay, so one of the reasons, and I get this quite a lot, is Banksy said no, or would say no. You know, they're sitting there and it's like, oh, we should get Banksy to do it, and then someone goes, no, he'll never do it, and they're like, okay, who's second on the list? All right, let's phone up Ben Eine, he might do it. So that probably happens quite a lot. The other reason why they chose me, or they might have chosen a street artist, is because of Shepard Fairey and the Hope campaign for Obama. So they kind of assumed that Obama had a vague interest in street art, or an interest in kind of younger, more urban, edgy art. I'd worked with Eine like the year previous, so they had a connection to me through Eine. It's really weird, like even in like government, like I don't know, it seems like the more important and powerful these corporations or these people are, they won't like cold call you. They won't Google you, find your email address, which is like so simple, and send you an email going, hi, we represent David Cameron from Downing Street, we'd like to talk to you. People like that only get in touch with you if they know somebody that knows you, if there's somebody that does an introduction. The same thing happened with Louis Vuitton, working with them. I'm like, I got to be pretty easy to find. You Google my name, you'll find an email address, and I answer my emails. But yeah, even Louis Vuitton, there needs to be a connection. Somebody has to make the introduction. So because of my work with Eine, there was that connection. And I'd also, a few months earlier, done this project on Middlesex Street in East London, where I'd painted the entire alphabet in order on every shop shutter on like 2 blocks, which was a logistical nightmare, and it took about a year convincing all the shop owners that it was a worthwhile project. But anyway, so I spent like a week painting all these shutters, and I think it was the Observer on a Sunday had done a double page spread on those paintings on Middlesex Street, and that was literally 2 weeks before I got the phone call. So I don't think they were necessarily thinking about me or a street artist. I think it was that series of events. It was the article in the Observer put the thought in their mind. Well, Obama being, you know, Shepard Fairey, Obama, the newspaper article put me in my mind, and then Samantha Cameron's connection with Eine, so they could actually call me up. So it was those things that led to me being chosen. At the time I was married to my ex-wife, and when I got married I took her name, So pretty much all of my convictions were in my maiden name. So, and all of the press about me as a street artist was in my married name. So if they had have looked into me like on a relatively basic level, searching Benjamin Flynn, they would have seen that I didn't have a criminal record, that I hadn't been arrested for graffiti and drugs. Had they looked a little bit deeper, then they probably would have found out that I did. But so maybe they didn't know about all of this, and the first that they read about it was in the newspapers the next day. But apart from like the first story that broke was in the Guardian, your friendly lefty anti-Tory paper, and they started to put a negative spin on it about me being a hoodie vandal. But pretty much after that, every single story was positive. So I think it worked well. I know there was a bit of a hoo-ha about the Camerons being mates with the people that make the Hunter wellies, and they gave the girls, Obama's kids, colourful Hunter wellies, and he got slagged off for promoting his mate's company. So, and they, you know, and everything about me was positive. So yeah, it was a gamble, like a really big gamble. And then a couple of months after that, I got an invitation to go to Downing Street and have tea and biscuits with Mr. Cameron and Samantha. And I've never voted in my life, and I would never vote Tory. And I really enjoyed talking to him. He was interesting, he was funny, he is obviously a really smart and on the ball man. And it was funny, we were sitting there chatting away, and his, I don't know, PA or assistant came in and was like, David, we've got to go. And he kind of like jumped up and he said, Samantha, off to Italy, dinner with Berlusconi. Don't worry, I'll get so-and-so to pull me out the jacuzzi before the whores turn up. And then walked out the door. And I was like, that's great. You know, Prime Ministers aren't meant to say that in front of like bods like me, just in case I do this and repeat the story in front of a video camera. So yeah, it was great. And it's like, you know, I started off tagging stuff. I'm not meant to be having tea and biscuits with the Prime Minister and hearing these conversations. So I would argue that people sitting on trains who, like, I know from experience, but then I kind of liked graffiti. When I would sit on the train from Lewisham to London Bridge when I had a job, I would stare out the window aimlessly for, you know, my 15-minute journey there, and it was the same shit that I would see every day. And if somebody splashed a little bit of colour on the wall, it made my journey a little bit more interesting. Conversations that I've heard from like Joe Public talking amongst themselves about graffiti, they are fascinated by how the kids do it. They're intrigued by why they do it. I've, in however many years of riding around on public transport, I've never heard angry from Tunbridge steaming from the ears going, that's disgusting, that's a waste of my money, my travel card is so expensive because of this. I've never heard that. That is an illusion put into passengers' minds by the authorities. Graffiti costs us £300 million a year to clean off, this is why your travel card's so expensive. Like, really? Graffiti is more expensive to put on the wall than it is to take off. Guarantee. It's more expensive to put on, and there's a bunch of kids doing it that have got part-time jobs or no jobs. They're just doing it because it's their passion. So if they can afford to put it on the wall, a multinational company can afford to take it off relatively cheaply, would be one argument. Another argument would be, why bother cleaning it off? All around the rest of the world, you get on a train and there's graffiti, and invariably it's good graffiti. You get the Eurostar into Paris and it's just graffiti. all the way. Everywhere around the world you see graffiti, no one cares. It's part of our urban makeup. It's, you know, hand in hand with advertising and, you know, the rest of the crap that we get bombarded with. So why bother cleaning it off? You know, it will start off with tags, and then it will be silver 3D things and with shadows and highlights, and then, you know, and then it will be colour, and then eventually it will look good, and then, you know, if you're wise, you'll start commissioning people to actually paint it and make it enjoyable. So I would say don't even bother wasting your money cleaning it off. It will naturally get better, and nobody's offended by it. Your trains, you know, when we were painting trains, the paints we used would melt the paint off the side of your trains. It would leave stains on the side of, you know, your London Underground trains. Now everything's coated in an anti-vandal thing, so pretty much it just wipes off. So I can't imagine it's more expensive to clean off graffiti off trains now than it was back then. I don't know, man. What are you wasting your money on? What are you spending your money on? Right, graffiti is illegal. Yeah, it's criminal damage. If you own a building, a round network, and you don't want graffiti on it, that is your right. And if you do graffiti on that building or that railway network, you are breaking the law. So if you get caught, you deserve to be punished. That's the law, right? We can't argue with that. Unless they're going to change the law and decriminalise graffiti, which they're not going to do. So we're stuck with that. You know, how do you stop people from doing graffiti? I don't think you really can. You know, I know loads of people that have been sent to prison that come out and continue doing graffiti. Get sent to prison, come out and continue doing graffiti. You kind of grow out of it when you're ready to grow out of it. You know, I grew out of it. I'd been doing it for 20 years. You know, as much as I didn't want to go to prison for graffiti, I'd also become really disillusioned with it, and it was boring, and I wasn't enjoying it, and so, you know, you kind of grow out of it.
Would you even like to see graffiti decriminalised?
I don't know, you know, this is, you know, when we were kids, we were like, you know, we'd talk about, you know, would we, if it was, well, it's like drugs, isn't it? It's like, you know, it's one of these things, you know, the war on graffiti, the war on drug, you know, who's winning the war on drugs? You know, drug dealers. You know, you can't stop graffiti. People are always gonna, you know, and it's just so cliched, but people are always gonna want to write on stuff. What you do is you stop artistic talent and artistic productions, and by being so kind of hardcore against it, all you get left with is the quick shit that is ugly. You know, so that's one byproduct of kind of stamping on, you know, trying to stop graffiti, is you can't stop it, you just get worse and shit graffiti. And you know, we were happy just writing our names on things, and then you managed to clean that off, and then so we'd get better inks, and then you'd clean that off, and then we'd mix our inks with leather dyes, and that would stain your trains, and then you'd get that off, and then we'd scratch our names in your windows, then you got that off, and then we found window etch that we can put in our pens, and that etches into your glass. And it's like, it doesn't get any more beautiful, it just gets uglier and faster. You won't stop it, you'll just get, you know, now you get kids just fire extinguishing trains as they go past with lines. You know, it's fun. Kids love doing that kind of crap. Costs a bit of money to clean off, and it's just ugly. That's all you're you're just gonna get left with ugly stuff. So if you want a load of ugly graffiti and a mess, carry on. But yeah, if you want some beautiful, nice art that, you know, 90% of the people actually enjoy, or yeah, 90% of the people don't care about, and a few people do enjoy, then, you know, kind of let them do it. Yeah, so one of the reasons why we kind of, like, from a young age kind of moved to Hackney and Shoreditch was because it was one of the poorest boroughs. So, you know, we could live relatively cheap, yeah, really cheap. You know, flats and stuff was really cheap. There was lots of studio spaces, but also Hackney Council had no money to clean off graffiti. Like, no, so they just didn't bother cleaning it off. So if you painted something, it would stay there for years. And as, you know, as artists, graffiti artists, you enjoy seeing your stuff. You know, we've grown up with it being painted over, so, you know, it no longer upsets us. But if you get to see your paintings, you know, when you go to work or when you go to meet your buddies, it's nice, you know, it's enjoyable. So, yeah, one of the reasons why we all kind of like gravitated towards Hackney and Shoreditch was because they didn't have a budget to clean graffiti and we could paint stuff and it would stay there. So as Hackney, you know, Shoreditch, blah blah, has become, you know, more, I don't know, gentrified, you know, bars etc. open up, you know, the council now has a bit of money, they have a graffiti cleaning team. At the beginning they would just clean off everything, then they'd clean off everything unless it looked like Banksy, and now they've wised up to the fact that, you know, Shoreditch, Hoxton, Hackney is globally recognised as a hub for, you know, street artists, world famous street artists. They've recognised that there is, you know, money to be made out of preserving or not cleaning this art off the walls. You know, I painted a wall over here, like, I know, 4 months ago, and I was there for like 2 days painting, and there must have been 20 street art tours going past. And most of these people were tourists, none of them were from this borough, and they're all here giving some dude money, but then spending the rest of their afternoon or the rest of their morning in Shoreditch, going into coffee shops, you know, contributing towards what's going on. And it's purely because they want to go on a street art tour. It's purely because they want to see the stuff that we do. It's purely because Hackney couldn't afford to clean it off and now has changed their policy towards it and doesn't. There's two kind of like opposing forces going on here. There's graffiti writers, which do it for a negative, egotistical, you know, adrenaline buzz, and they don't give a shit about anyone else. They're doing it for themselves and their mates. And then there's street artists who want to, you know, make the world a better place, who want people to see their art, who don't want to look at a boring grey wall, who want to put some colour on stuff. So there's two opposing forces. You know, everyone wants the good stuff and no one wants the shit stuff. And the kids that do the good stuff, the kids that do the graffiti resent the, you know, the opportunities and the breaks that these bullshit artists get because they're doing street art, they're not real writers, blah blah, you know, just massive bullshit argument. You know, councils just have to be open to it. You know, people are always going to tag the side of your house. If you get a street artist to paint it, it will probably still get tagged at some point. But so what? Just paint. It's paint. Just paint over it. It's just, that's, at the end of the day, it's just paint. Well, this is the other thing. It's like, you know, I've never applied for a grant to do anything. I didn't go to art school. Like, maybe 2 of the walls that I've ever painted and maybe 1 shutter I've ever painted, and I've painted like 500 shutters, I've been paid to do. Invariably, I find the wall, I pay for the ladders, I pay for the scaffolding, I pay for the paint, and yeah, aeroplanes, whatever. I fund all of that. People, there's an illusion that I've just got an inbox from people saying, if I fly you here and give you £5,000, will you paint my wall? That just doesn't happen, right? I've done everything myself. So yeah, my advice to people that want to do it is go and do it. No one is stopping you from doing it. If you really, really want to do it, go and do it. If you're waiting for somebody to email, if you're waiting to get noticed and then get an email saying we'll give you some money to come and paint your wall, then you should probably get another job, because it's never going to happen. The best things, creatively, culturally, artistically, come out of a struggle. The punk movement, hip hop, it comes out of shit, it comes out of a recession, it comes out of people fighting really hard for what they want. And the people that I know that are successful in street art work really fucking hard and have struggled and have been arrested and been sent to prison and beaten up and broken up with wives, because they have a passion and a drive to do this, because it's what they do. And yeah, I don't know what, the worst street art I see is when councils have tried giving walls to street artists because they get the wrong people. Give it a go. There isn't an answer to this, because you're dealing with hundreds of little individuals from the age of 12 to the age of 50 that have all got different agendas and different attitudes, and sleep at different times of the day and night. So there isn't an answer, but wasting millions and millions of pounds on removing it isn't the answer. I think naturally something will happen that is good. If somebody cares enough about fixing my scary wall when somebody tags over it, because I don't live in this country anymore, someone will fix it. And if no one cares enough about fixing that scary wall when somebody tags over it, in 6 months later it will be covered in tags and it's still there. So somebody cares enough to fix it, because I'm not here. So I probably fixed it once, and I don't know how many years it's been there, a while. So it will happen naturally. I did everything off my own back. I went out and found the stuff and did the stuff, and same with Banksy. He finds his walls, he paints his walls, he goes to extreme lengths. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he still paints everything he paints. He hasn't got a remote control attached to an assistant's head with a GoPro to a live feed. So I'm pretty sure he still goes out and does it himself, and can you imagine what a nightmare that must be for him? If you want to do it, you'll do it, and that includes tagging trains and making a mess. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I don't think you should be sending graffiti writers that have pretty much retired to prison for 2 years for a load of crap they did 5 years ago that no longer exists. What's the point? They're pretty much given up. I don't think you should be sending graffiti writers to prison full stop, because at the end of the day they're just changing the colour of something, and that's not that bad. However, I also appreciate that if this person continually appears in front of you as a magistrate, at some point you have to say, when are you going to learn? Off to prison. And they probably still won't learn. They'll give up when they're ready. So yeah, I don't think prison's the right answer for graffiti writers. especially fat graffiti writers that are virtually retired. But, you know, what can you do? Yeah, what is the answer? You know, all of this has come out of like illegal activities, and, you know, I got old and couldn't run away anymore and got a bit bored and turned it into a job. That's kind of what will happen to people if they have a passion, and that's what they can't do anything else. And other people will find something else to do or get into drugs, and then new kids will start doing it. And you know, another reason why I don't do it anymore is because I remember when it was easy to get into a train yard and there wasn't laser trips and sensors, and now kids are like, yeah, I remember when it was easy to get into a yard and all there was razor wire. And that's kind of when I stopped. And you know, as much as you put walls in front of people to stop them from doing stuff, there are some people that will just need to jump over that wall. And you know, I was that person. You know, if you said I couldn't do it, I would have to do it. So, and there, you know, there are people that are like born that way, and they will always go and do it. And I think it's a shame that their reward for having misguided kind of drive and passion is wasting their lives in prison. But you know, what can you do? Yeah, there needs to be more playgrounds for kids that haven't got fucking council monitors making sure they're only using